The summer had been unusually hot, the sun relentless day after day, casting an unending glare over the quaint little neighborhood of Maplewood Lane. The houses were cozy, the lawns neatly trimmed, and everyone kept to themselves, except for the new family that had moved in next door to Maddie and her younger brother, Jamie. The Thompsons seemed off even from the very beginning. They arrived under the cover of dusk, unloading boxes with the precision of military operatives, all the while dressed in dark, unyielding colors that seemed ill-suited for the heat. Maddie noticed Mrs. Thompson the most. Her long, black hair hung like a curtain, obscuring her face, and her voice had a husky, almost slithering quality whenever she exchanged pleasantries. Mr. Thompson, on the other hand, barely spoke at all. He would often glower at anyone who dared venture too close, his chiseled jaw set in a permanent scowl. But it was what came next that would make the Thompsons infamous and inexplicably terrifying. The neighbors started disappearing. First, it was Mr. Green, the jovial mailman who always shared candy with the neighborhood kids. One day he simply didn't return from his usual route, and while the parents brushed it off as a grown-up thing, Maddie felt uneasy. Whispers began creeping into the neighborhood like shadows. Weeks passed, and then Mrs. Thompson's garden flourished suspiciously. The vegetables were huge and oddly vibrant, catching the eye of everyone who passed by. Top-notch organic gardening, she would tell anyone who asked, a smile flickering across her lips like a sinister secret. Panic crept in when old Mrs. Jenkins, who lived alone at the end of the street, failed to come to the community bingo night. Maddie shuddered at the thought. Something was fishy. One evening, as the moon hung low and pale in the clear sky, Maddie and Jamie set out on a walk with their dog, Max. Against her better judgment, she decided to take a shortcut past the Thompsons' yard. The scents swirling in the air were enticing yet oddly metallic, so rich it made her stomach churn. Just then, she spotted something red in the garden, something that didn't belong among the ripe tomatoes and sharp green peppers. "Look," she pointed to Jamie, "what is that?" Upon closer inspection, it was unmistakable, a crimson smear on the fence post, born from a series of dark footprints leading towards the back of the Thompsons' property. Hesitantly, they approached. Peering through the wooden slats, the sounds from the Thompsons' backyard began to grow louder. Low, guttural growls interspersed with bizarre, inorganic screeches. It was a rhythm of chaos. They crouched down, the prickly grass scratching at their shins, when suddenly, a loud clang rang out as the door to the basement swung open. Maddie gasped, clutching Jamie's arm so tightly it left marks on his skin. Mrs. Thompson emerged, dragging something heavy behind her. Her husband was waiting, standing like a gargoyle beside a vast, dark trapdoor. The moonlight caught the edge of the object she was dragging, a red-stained tarp. Maddie couldn't breathe. They were pulling something out of the basement that must have belonged to someone who had changed their fate on Maplewood Lane. While Maddie's heart raced, Jamie quietly unlocked his phone's flashlight, dubbing it their only weapon against the dread. Then again, the thought of shining light on something so deeply twisted terrified them both. Suddenly, their curious pet erupted into a frenzy, barking furiously as if sensing the dark energy filling the air. Max bounded towards the Thompsons' fence, and in a flurry of panic, Maddie grabbed Jamie's hand, pulling him back just as Mrs. Thompson looked their way. Time froze. "Looks like we have some eavesdroppers," she hissed, her voice slithering through the air like smoke. "Kids shouldn't be wandering around at night. It's not safe." Their legs unraveled at the sound of her voice, and for the first time, Maddie saw her teeth glinting, sharp, uneven, and terrifying. Jamie whimpered, and that seemed to provoke Mr. Thompson. He stepped forward, a shadow from the night, hands tucked menacingly into his pockets. Without thinking, Maddie yanked Jamie into a sprint, adrenaline propelling them away from the garden of horrors. The two ran until they reached the safety of their front porch, their breaths mingled with fear. But the back door of the Thompsons' home creaked open, just a sliver, and she could see them watching, hungry looks carved on their faces. That night, Maddie locked the doors and windows. They whispered about what they had seen, the dread coiling tight in their stomachs. Maddie couldn't shake the feeling. They weren't just peculiar neighbors. Something darker lurked behind their smiles, something predatory. In the morning, the police had the Thompsons in handcuffs. They were silent, devoid of all their charisma, but still, a twisted grin played on Mrs. Thompson's lips as they loaded her into the cruiser. It was just a misunderstanding, she crooned eerily, and the officers merely shook their heads. The neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief, but deep down, Maddie knew. They would remember how easily neighbors could turn into monsters, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to feast. The sun had set, and darkness once again swept over Maplewood Lane, leaving nothing but echoes of an unspeakable horror.